opportunity. We're very grateful to have Joseph Puru Selbie, an amazing author, and but not just an author. He's a dear friend of ours and a dear friend of and supporter of Ananda Sangha Australia. He's always amazingly giving energy around to Australia, but around the world. And he's been an instrumental core member of the Ananda community and helped set up communities around the world. Um, and I guess why we're here is just an amazing scientific mind that is able to share really simplicity, the what's happening in the world, what's happening with us, what's happening with, and putting that scientific spin on all masters' teachings and truth, I guess, is as much as anything. So we're very, very grateful to have you with us today, and it'll go a little bit like this. We'll sort of hand over to Peru, and he will share some amazing inspiration about the whys of what's happening and what's happening with in relation to the spiritual world. And then we'll open up for some questions after about half an hour, 40 minutes. We'll see how we go. For those that have questions as you go along, please put pop them in the chat and we'll get through them as much as we can, depending on how much time we have. But questions are always great because if you're thinking it, probably someone else will be thinking it. So it'll be a great way to share our time together. So over to you.
Well, thanks for having me as always. And it's good to see so many smiling faces. Always a pleasure to talk with this group. So, the topic for today is the future of spirituality. And this topic came out of a conversation that I had with Nara and Kalamali about what did they think people might be interested in hearing about. And when we got to this subject, they kind of lit up. And I think it's a part of a broader question that a lot of people have of not only what is the future of spirituality, but what is the future? Where are we going? And one of the books that I was privileged to write at the request of Swami Kriyananda, founder of Ananda, is the book called simply The Yugas. And the Yugas have been a concept in the, Nara's holding up the cover there, have been a concept in India for thousands of years. And the basic idea is that the development of civilization, and more significantly, the development, the increase in the level of consciousness of mankind goes in a big cycle that, according to the Yugas, as put forward by Sri Yukteswar, the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda, who was the teacher of Swami Kriyananda, the cycle is 24,000 years in length. And the last high point of this cycle was 11,500 BC. And the last low point of the cycle was 500 AD. And now we're on the upswing from 500 AD to present. The consciousness of mankind has been growing, has been increasing in awareness. The other aspect, and the reason why it's called the Yugas, or the Yugas translates to the ages, is there are distinct segments of the cycle that are called Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And each yuga or each age has a hallmark of a certain kind of awareness that is shared by the, the bulk of mankind. Not everybody is in any age all of the same level of consciousness, but there's a general sort of center of consciousness that is the hallmark of each of those ages. And Kali Yuga, the lowest age, the hallmark of that is that people's ability to understand reality is limited to what their senses reveal to them. So the senses are only able to perceive matter, the material world in which we find ourselves. And so because of that perception, the civilizations they create tend to be very matter-centric. And one indication of that you can see from Kali Yuga, which had two phases, if you will. It had a descending Kali Yuga arc and an ascending Kali Yuga arc for a total of 2,400 years. And it went from 700 BC to 1700 AD. And during that time, if you follow your history at all, mankind was very dogmatic, very fixed in the way it did things. Most people had no education. The abilities that man developed were mostly animal power, wind power, human power to make things happen. And the peaks, if you will, of their civilization were giant stone edifices, very solid, very material constructions. Dwapara Yuga, which we're in now, we're in the ascending arc of Dwapara Yuga, is an age in which mankind as a whole is more able to comprehend energy than was possible in Kali Yuga. And there's an outer comprehension of energy, which is hallmarked by Einstein's theory of relativity that says matter isn't real, it's energy in fixed forms, fixed motion that behaves as if it were a fixed form, behaves as if it were matter. But that underlying all matter is energy. And in the Dwapara Yuga so far, there's been a lot of exploitation of that knowledge. We have a civilization, worldwide civilization, that is underpinned by the use of more subtle types of energy than wind power, animal power, and human power. We have electricity, we have nuclear energy, we have solar energy, which turns into electricity. We have many new forms that are powering and enabling our civilization. Well, the next age beyond Dwapara Yuga, which doesn't come to us for another roughly 2,000 years, is called Treta Yuga. And Treta Yuga's hallmark is mental awareness, subtle mental awareness, and mental abilities. Sri Yukteswar said in Treta Yuga, the most common means of communication will be telepathy, mental telepathy. It's not that people will no longer speak, but that the easiest way for them to communicate will be this shared ability to communicate telepathically. So along with that comes abilities such as an increased power of manifestation, that what we consider to be miraculous today will be commonplace in Treta Yuga. And there will be a shift in, most important level, a shift in the purpose, the shared purpose that people have. It'll be more towards serving and helping each other, and will have a very enlightened form of, sort of light level of government that is something, many of us long for today. And then the highest age of all is called Satya Yuga. And in Satya Yuga, mankind as a whole, again, underscoring that some people alive in Satya Yuga may not have as exalted a awareness as others, but the bulk of people alive in Satya Yuga will be able to perceive spirit, God, behind creation. They'll be able to understand that spirit underlies mental abilities, and mental abilities underlie the energy understanding that we have today, and that spirit underlies even the physical universe. These are layers of knowledge that will gradually be sort of peeled back as we continue in our sweep up from Dwapara Yuga to Satya Yuga. But that is our future in 12,500 AD. It will reach its peak, and then the cycle will begin to descend. There'll be a descending arc of Satya Yuga, of Treta Yuga, of Dwapara Yuga, and back down to Kali Yuga. And that descending arc is 12,000 years. Our ascending arc is 12,000 years. Today, being in Dwapara Yuga, energy awareness influences not only the outer development of civilization, the outer culture that we have developed, but also inner abilities. So the outer culture, just to give it a bit of a picture, is an energy, is a culture that depends on energy, but also the motivation that a lot of people have in our age is to control through energy, to control energy directly, to control the energies of others and put them to work. And that is largely motivated by self-interest. Unfortunately, Dwapara Yuga is not a particularly high yuga, although we are on the upswing, so we'll get better and better, as I'll soon address. But right now we live in a very self-centered age. There is the emergence of what you could call enlightened self-interest, where people understand that their self-interest lies in helping others to advance, helping others to get a better education, helping others live a better life, that there is a small percentage, if you will, of people alive today who appreciate that helping others helps them, and that experientially they get that it's more blessed to give than receive, that they feel better, they feel uplifted, they feel expanded, they feel happy in helping others. But right now, the majority of people help those who are closest to them only. They take care of their families. They take care of their friends. But beyond that, unfortunately, everybody else is sort of fair game that if they don't benefit as much as that person, they don't particularly care because their interest is self-interest. You can see this with individual behavior. You can see this with national behavior. We have a nation-state system, which is destined, I believe, to go away. But right now, you have nation states whose decisions and actions are driven by not so much a particular person's self-interest, although there is a lot of that having to do with who is the ruler, but also with what's best for that nation. And so there's a vying for benefit in international affairs, which is just a reflection of this Dwapara consciousness. But there's another thing that's happening that is less seen. It doesn't get the attention that international affairs do, or that movie stars and football players do, but is very much a growing movement within civilization today that is directly an expression of the inner knowledge, the inner benefit of Dwapara Yuga. So the outer benefit of Dwapara Yuga is, even though we're dealing with people with a great deal of self-interest, we do have a world that is a lot more beneficial to people. We have advanced medicine, we have better homes, better diet. So that energy fixation of many people is not all bad. I would certainly trade it, keep it, if I were offered even the best of Kali Yuga, where the life expectancy was 35 or 40 and disease was rampant, diet was terrible, and the way they treated each other was truly horrible at times. Unfortunately, history gives a romanticized picture of Kali Yuga. I don't think many historians would actually want to go live in it, but they have a tendency to think of, as they call it, the grandeur of Rome, for example. Give it a very sort of high-minded sounding description. And perhaps there was some grandeur. There were, amazing cities built, Roman roads, etc. But it was also a time when the Colosseum existed, in which gladiators fought each other to the death for the entertainment of a big crowd of people sitting around making a day of it. They had people walking through the crowd selling food. It's like a football game, only what they were doing was killing people. There was a single day in the Caesarship of, I believe it was Justinian, where 10,000 people were killed in one long day. So I definitely am happier to be here than I would be to be in Kali Yuga. So when I say that Dwapara Yuga is not that advanced, it's certainly more advanced than Kali Yuga. I mean, did I say Kali Yuga? I meant Dwapara. Dwapara is certainly more advanced than Kali Yuga, but it has this self-interest that is going to mark it for many, many centuries hence. But there is this growing percentage of people, and my assumption, my strong conviction is that all of you who are tuning in here for this talk are a part of this percentage that in America is known as the people who are spiritual but not religious. And in America, there are varying estimates, but I think the latest estimate is something in the neighborhood of 35 million people self-identify themselves in polls as being, excuse me, spiritual but not religious. And, excuse me, this group of people is embracing practices and beliefs, but particularly practices that are more experiential than the sort of commandment-driven religions of Kali Yuga and into today. We still have sort of the remnants of that thinking very much with us today in, massive Catholic Church, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, that while their roots were the teachings of great saviors whose consciousness was exalted, was fully self-realized, over time, the practice of the religions that they left in their wake became increasingly dogmatic. And you had vastly lower expectations for what human potential can be than what Jesus said or Krishna said or Buddha said. And they become kind of, if you do certain things right, you're saved. If you attend church, basically behave well, believe in your Savior, then you're good to go. When you die, you go into heaven, and that's all there is to it. But that's breaking down today. I doubt if there's any of you listening to me who are attracted to that kind of religious experience. You may have, and there are many people I know who have respect for the foundations of those religions and are, I think it's safe to say, we can all feel happier that they existed, even in their lesser forms, because they probably improved mankind significantly in Kali Yuga. But today, they're not really working. For one thing, their dogmas aren't very believable anymore. We have a view of reality that comes to us from science that is far more expanded than what existed in Kali Yuga. We see ourselves in a universe that has 100 billion galaxies. And in each of those 100 billion galaxies, there can be as many as 100 or 200 billion stars. The scope of how we view reality is just enormously expanded since Kali Yuga, when most of the world believed the world was flat and that there were just a relatively small number of stars out there and planets. And it was kind of easier to see how they might assume that mankind was the center of all that. Physical man was the center of all that. Where today, that's a lot harder to believe. And it's a lot harder to believe that God would have sent one man as his only begotten son to give everybody the real message of truth, the way, and the light, thousands of years after millions upon millions of people had already come and gone. That this kind of thinking is just too small for our minds today. Whereas experiential practices are really directed towards those of us who want to experience the divine directly and not just accept a certain set of dogmas that are the end all and be all of their religious life, but to, rather than wait for the heaven in the hereafter, they want to experience heaven in the here and now. That the practices have a real and immediate benefit to us when we practice them. This experiential spirituality wasn't possible in Kali Yuga. It has only become possible in our Dwapara Yuga because, along with that knowledge of or discovery of energy being the foundation of all matter, from this outward scientific perspective, people have discovered through experience that they have life force. And life force is the common denominator of all experiential spirituality, that, and beyond spirituality, healing, the new expressions of healing that have come over the last, let's say, 100 years have all been based on energy healing, based on the notion that we have not just a physical nervous system, but we have an energy system that is responsible for creating and sustaining the physical body, and that energy healing is about eliminating blocks that occur to that energy system, or stimulating energy and creating greater flows of energy in that energy system so that we can achieve health, or working with people on a emotional level. Emotions are basically movements of life force in the body. When you feel love, you feel this expansion of life force in the heart. When you feel inspired, you feel life force flowing upward into the brain. Most of what we enjoy feeling is the expansion or elevation of life force within the physical nervous system and beyond, because where we mostly feel it is in our subtle energy body. And that's also where we mostly experience what is commonly thought of as spirituality today. So in a way, you could say spirituality is the religion of Dwapara. It's not a religion in the dogmatic and fixed sense of Kali Yuga, but it is the form, the delivery system to help people understand how to attain higher states of consciousness through using that innate connection they have to their own life force. So something I enjoy doing with groups is something I imagine you've all done before, but just for fun, we're going to do it again. Rub your hands together fairly vigorously. Rub them together And then close your eyes, stop rubbing your hands, and then start to tune into what you feel in your hands. And you can begin to move your hands apart. And you'll probably feel as you pull your hands apart and bring your hands back together that there's something there. It's as if there's a substance almost between your palms. And that is, in simple terms, your life force. So you can open your eyes. Now, I can't prove this, but I believe that in Kali Yuga, if I'd had a group of people that I was talking to and asked them to do that, that none of them would feel anything between the palms of their hands. That what we gain inwardly when we're born into Dwapara Yuga is we have a more refined nervous system. And it's that more refined nervous system that allows us to perceive life force flowing through us, moving through us in our hands and bodies. And it's that innate ability to perceive life force that also becomes the key to us experiencing higher consciousness through meditation in particular. It's very interesting that energy healing, meditation, yoga postures, what am I looking for? Needles, Chinese medicine.
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Sorry, we were trying to jump in.
Yes, just blank completely on it. Acupuncture, that all of those things existed in descending Dwapara Yuga. Meditation we learn about today was taught before 700 BC. Acupuncture was practiced before 700 BC. Healing, energy healing modalities that are actually in many cases more sophisticated than the energy modalities we have today existed before 700 BC. So we're, in a way, waking up to the same possibilities today as existed in descending Dwapara. Meditation is central to that. And central to meditation is learning to internalize your life force, to bring your life force out of the senses into the spine, the inner spine, the subtle spine, and to direct that life force upward into the brain. And that basic process results in an expansion of joy as that energy rises up, inspiration, intuition, overall feeling of well-being, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it all comes about by us learning to direct and use the life force which we are blessed to be able to perceive because we were born into these Dwapara Yuga bodies. The bodies that people are going to be born into in Treta Yuga are going to have even more refined nervous systems, which allows them to perceive thought at birth. And the nervous systems that people are born into in Satya Yuga are going to be even more refined, and people will immediately be able to perceive spirit. Now, we don't have to wait for that 2,000 years ahead Treta Yuga or 5,000 years ahead Satya Yuga, because by practicing meditation, we refine our own nervous systems. And it's possible with depth of meditation to refine your nervous system to the extent that you can receive the tremendous energy and power that comes with high levels of perception of spirit. But even without that ultimate experience, what you're going to experience, even in the Dwapara nervous systems we're getting, is wonderful. I think everybody will nod their head at the fact that in meditation, you have deep experiences that are joyful, calming, peaceful, loving, that don't just come without that journey inward. So that, I think, is the future of spirituality in Dwapara, is that we will, as meditation practitioners, refine our nervous systems more and more through our life and be able to experience greater and greater levels of divine experience. People born after us and in the centuries to come will have even more refined nervous systems that they will just inherit by being born at a, essentially a higher frequency level on the planet that will give them a leg up on where we are now, make their meditation easier until the end of Dwapara, that will become commonplace. People will use their life force routinely, as they did in descending Dwapara, only that became known today as magic. People could work magic because they could direct their life force with intention to manifest things. And that could be health, that could be prosperity. Unfortunately, it could be making someone they didn't like go bald, and many other things. But it's all based on the ability to perceive and control and direct your life force. In a ascending yuga as we are, people will get more and more enlightened in their use of their energies, and self-interest, which dominates the world today, will gradually be replaced by enlightened self-interest, and society as a whole become increasingly more enlightened. But today we have what we have, and it can get us all the way to God if we have the focus and will and determination to do it. So I'm going to open up to questions you might have. Hopefully I will have answers.
Thank you, Puruji. Just while everyone who's got a question is perhaps typing it in, one of the questions that comes to mind as far as many of us wanting to see that future be ushered in and help people, attune to that energy and the healing that can come in that expression of Dwapara or higher ages, as you've shared. So, what would be the best way to help this planet with the future of spirituality?
That's an excellent question. I think it is important to state that all of the high spiritual teachers address the reality that we all have free will, that we all make choices. And a lot of people say, well, I don't feel like I'm very free, but you have the ability to make your next choice. That's how you exercise free will. Whatever choice you make next, you're exercising your free will to make that choice, whether it's an action or a thought or a relationship. You're exercising your free will in that way. And because that's true, no yuga, descending or ascending, is going to unfold in exactly the same way. That we are not helpless participants in a fixed Dwapara Yuga unfolding. We can increase it, we can speed it up. And the way to hasten that evolution is exactly the same as the way to hasten our own evolution. We don't realize it so much because we can't see it. We can't see how our energy, our life force, radiates out from us and affects other people. But if we could, we would be very enheartened, because just meditating sends out waves of positive energy that, because they're subtle, meaning they're not physical energies, they have no barriers of distance. My meditation this morning affected every one of you, and every one of you in your meditation affected me and everyone else in the world. And it's much more powerful than you might think, because it seems like the world is not changing at all, perhaps changing for the worse, but certainly not changing fast. But I think it's changing faster than you would guess. I know American history and American cultural history better than I would know events in Australia or other countries. But I can say that in America, the way in which would seem horrible to me and most people today. You had the repression of minorities. You had the repression of women. Women were legally chattel in America in 1925. They didn't have the right to vote. Lynchings happened. Wife beating was like a normal thing. I'm horrified to even say these things, but it's true. But this was 100 years ago. So in just 100 years, those things have become odious to people and far less common, even though they still unfortunately happen today. And I imagine if you look in any culture in any country, you would see that things actually are changing quite a lot. Now, there's still wars, there's still greed, there's still many things that are unhappy expressions of human nature, but they're just slightly less bad than they used to be. Things are improving slightly. And I think it's in large measure because people are improving. And the more we improve, the more we raise our consciousness, the more the consciousness of the whole world is raised. And you're much more powerful than you think you are. This is not to say you can't do other more direct things to improve the world you're in. If you're drawn to any and all of those things, they all help. But I think the most important thing you can do is, as Gandhi was quoted as saying, be the change you want to see in the world. So if you want the world to be compassionate, be compassionate. If you want the world to be joyful, be joyful. If you want the world to be loving, be loving. That is where you have the most ability to affect others. And the wonderful part is you benefit too. You're a channel for however you affect the world.
Thank you. That was so helpful. Very well shared. We have a really good follow-up question to that because many of us are connected to nature, the plants, and pets, animals. So how do those souls and those expressions of form also ascend through these yugas?
That's a great question. I can only be pretty much speculative on this. So I don't want you to take what I'm saying as anything that has come down from Yogananda or Sri Yukteswar that I would then freely say I believe it to be true. But here's what I speculate. I think some of the ancient tales that are told, particularly I'm thinking of the Ramayana in India, where you had a whole civilization of monkeys that could talk and were intelligent. One of their great leaders was Hanuman, who was a great soul. I think that's literally true. I think that happened in Treta Yuga, and I think that some animals that are close to high levels of evolution even now will probably be much more highly conscious and highly expressive in the higher yugas. And yet they'll still be perhaps lagging the complete consciousness of the humans that are incarnating at that time. One of the sort of more comical things, I guess, in the Ramayana about the monkey kingdom is that they were always fighting. They were always arguing with each other. They could never get along, and leaders didn't last long. So again, I tend to think that might have been literally true. I think that many animals that are today predators might not be predators in the higher yugas, that their behaviors would change. One of the mysteries today of what's still today called the theory of evolution is exactly how does the DNA get accidentally changed in a species that will then result in some improvement in that species' survivability. That they have different colored fur, they have spots, or they have, changing in the shape of their hands or claws, etc., that give them some edge over other species. That's the basic theory of evolution. But I think the change doesn't actually happen by random accidents of DNA mutating. I think it all happens in the higher yugas. I think that animals are more willfully able to adapt and change their own DNA. We can change our own DNA now. DNA is not fixed. We're learning more and more that the DNA you were born with is very unlikely to be the set of DNA genes that you die with. Genes can change every day. In fact, there are genes that are regulated, upregulated, that help you sleep, and that are deregulated when you wake up. So DNA is not at all the fixed thing that we've been led to believe for the last 50 or 60 years. So animals too could, by their behavior, change their DNA, and particularly by changing their behavior in higher ages. And so the next time around, they might have abilities that they didn't have 24,000 years ago. So you can decide that I'm making all of this up, or you can laugh and think that some of this might be true. Plants, I'm not so sure about. They are sentient, just like everything else. So they may too more quickly change as a species in the higher ages and then become more fixed in the lower ages. So I could go on, but just in case there are other questions.
So great answer, by the way. That was so interesting to think about, and a great reminder about genetics and the fluidity of how things are expressed that we often think are fixed. Now, this is a great question. Going off of that idea of in Kali Yuga, the many people thinking the earth was flat, but also still there being that idea present today. So the question was, what is the connection between those people that are having that thought today and that yuga?
Very, very slow learners. No, I don't know what that connection would be. It's an interesting, I often think that the flat earthers, I just enjoy being contrary, and that they don't necessarily believe it heart and soul, or their explanation for how the earth could be flat is actually more subtle than they're given credit for. That it involves maybe a mix of subtle reality and physical reality. But I don't know that I could say they have any connection to, maybe they were all incarnated at that time and they just are stubborn about it and want it to be true.
I love the answer and its simplicity, and also a sense of joy and humor about it all. So we have one other question here. It's another very thought-provoking one about the theories of Graham Hancock and any consistencies with what we understand for the Yugas. And do you know of Graham Hancock? Perhaps that would,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Yes. Graham Hancock is somebody I actually know. I've spoken at a lot of Yugas conferences or conferences that deal with sort of alternative pictures of prehistory and ancient history. And Graham Hancock is a frequent speaker. So because I'm a speaker as well, I get a chance to, talk with him and meet with him in more informal situations. And I know that he also endorsed my book, The Yugas. He read it, thought it was a good book. And I know from talking to him that he's open to the Yugas as a possible explanation for the ancient past. And what he does believe in particular right now, his beliefs have changed over the years. He started off as a more open to the notion that aliens came to the earth and that their advanced technology and knowledge sort of gave us a nudge and created some higher civilizations in the past. And then they decided that it was no fun here anymore and they left. He's less into that now, although I don't think he rules it out. But what he's gravitated to today is what's called the ancient apocalypse theory, that there were higher civilizations in the past, but they got wiped out by cometary impacts or another popular theory is that there would be a massive solar radiation that would kill off most people and set back mankind's progress towards civilization by killing off most of the people. I don't think that it's true to that extent. I think there could have been large scale catastrophes in the past that would have certainly had a big impact on people. There was a volcano that erupted, Mount Tuba, in 72,000 years ago, which is about 3 cycles of the Yugas ago, that spewed so much ash into the world that you can still find the layer all over the world of ash. And there is DNA evidence that the number of people alive on the earth after the Mount Tuba explosion was numbered in the thousands. So it almost eradicated mankind. But I don't see any evidence like that. I don't see DNA evidence. I don't see ash evidence. I don't see any, common evidence that you find around the world for it to have happened 10 or 12,000 years ago, which is what Graham Hancock is thinking is the case, and others, not just Graham, but he's very much embraced that thought. Now, there could have been other things. The sea levels rose, that's unquestionably true, but they rose really slowly. So it could have been that prior civilizations, Dwapara civilizations, Satya Yuga civilizations, lived closely on the coastlines. And when the sea level rose, evidence of their civilizations disappeared because they just got covered with water. But I also tend to think that Satya Yuga is not a time when mankind as a whole would be interested in building big buildings. And they're knowing God. Yogananda said that their consciousness is so elevated that they can see into the astral regions, that there's just a thin separation between their consciousness and the consciousness on the other side of death. So they're more interested in meditating a lot and being absorbed in spirit than, building gigantic temples. Not to say that there wasn't any building in Satya Yuga, there is, but there's nothing that suggests the grandeur of Rome, right? Which is what historians tend to latch onto as a sign of civilization. And there's no evidence of technology, which is another thing that more modern day historians tend to latch onto as a proof of higher civilizations in the past. I just think they weren't interested in those things. They didn't need them. There were fewer people back then. There were probably millions rather than the almost 8 billion we have today, which force us to exploit technology and engineering skills and the creation of dams and homes, etc., in order to take care of people. But in Satya Yuga, they just didn't have that issue. Plus, they could work miracles, which would, I think, come in very handy for food, for anything else you might need. And Satya Yuga was a similarly high age. So I think the reason why there is less evidence in the past of any kind of high civilization is, one, we're defining high civilization in our own terms, And two, they just didn't need it. And so even if there had been a giant cometary impact, or there had been some gigantic solar flare, there would not have been huge numbers of civilizations to wipe out. Graham's a great guy, by the way, but he's very fixed on this ancient apocalypse theory right now.
Well, that was really neat to follow the thought and reasoning behind why there are different theories out there and just a different perspective of how to approach them and connect them with what we understand. And we're very grateful because the amount of research and knowledge that you've gathered to create this book is such a gift. And as you said, it was commandeered, really. It was part of this, Ray, to have this information available for all of us to give us this understanding in relation to consciousness. We really thank you.
I enjoy the knowledge as much as you guys do. It's always been very inspirational to me, and I love being able to share it.
Well, we're so fortunate.
You're doing amazing. Yeah, you're a great channel. Thank you for you're always bringing your energy in.
And supporting
Support.
these group of devotees here.
Hmm.
Thank you. We know how much opportunities you have to share with others out there, and for those of you who it's your first time being with Puruji, he has consistently been present with us every few months, and we're so grateful because he brings so much in his wisdom and light that he shares, and he's working on a new book soon, and it'll be really special to have that as well in our libraries and knowledge of just attunement to Swamiji and Yogananda.
Don't anyone hold your breath. It takes me forever to write a book. And I just started. My average time to write a book is about 3 years. So be very, very patient.
Perfect. Something for us to look forward to.
I'll just keep writing you.
Yeah.
You there yet? Are you there yet?
Yeah. I probably should have kept my mouth quiet. I'm a little excited because it always means your inspiration is so tuned into the little wisdom coming through in those books. So it's really lovely to have that with us.
Well, it's my privilege and my honor to share these teachings. So I'm blessed to be able to do it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to next time. And thanks
All
everyone.
right. God bless everyone.
Joy to you.
Joy.